Go to the loo, it's in Suji House, which is head up that way, or if you can hold it, better still. Alright? If you have a mobile, please make sure it's on silent. I forgot the other day. And if you can't hear anybody at any time, any of the speakers, there's about 35 speakers, if you can't hear them, just put your hand up and we can sort that out. Alright? Now, I'll get rid of that mobile phone. You've just been greeted to some beautiful music, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Judy Garland's epic song, and that was played by Cynthia. So we've already had a taste of Cynthia as you came in this afternoon. And I can still see her fingers when I watched the video, actually, just gliding over the keyboard. She's no pushover, but a softie with a wicked sense of humour and an infectious chuckle. She left no instructions on this for this occasion, and probably that's because she wouldn't be here to control things. So it's all left to Cliff and Tim. So on behalf of Cliff, Tim, Tim's partner Greer, grandchildren Katya and Willem, who just flew in from Melbourne late last night, welcome to this moment in time that we have all set aside to reflect on and celebrate the life of Cynthia de Kretser. It's a rather beautiful setting here, one of her favourites, apparently, Fuchsia House. And here it is in the Royal Botanical Gardens, which importantly, and I do too as well, acknowledges the Mwinana people as the traditional custodians of this land. And a special welcome to those who may watch later down the track on the recording, particularly those people who may be watching in Cliff. Okay, Cliff and Tim have asked a few of her great and lifelong friends to briefly reflect on Cynthia's life. Her flair, style, passions, quirks, weaknesses and strengths. To open the proceedings, Cliff. And I'm sure we will all acknowledge the strength of the relationship you had with Cynthia and the tremendous support he has provided, especially in the last few difficult years. Cliff.
Thank you, Greg. And I'm so glad to see everyone here. Cynthia would have loved this, and I keep on reflecting that I've got to tell Cynthia about this. But, Cynthia arrived in Australia when she was 17 and made it down to Tasmania a few years later with her son Tim, about 3 years old at that time. And she said, I've been here in Tasmania for 50 years. She was famous for saying, back in the day. We met in Sri Lanka, actually. It was at Kretser. She had gone there to... she had just left her job at Work Skills, and she was going to open a guest house down in the south in a place called Unawatana. And I had been doing some work in Sri Lanka and knew her brother. I actually met Tim just before Cynthia got there. And we got to know each other. I helped her set up the house down in Unawatana, a place called Land's End. And it was a terrific place. She had moved all her furniture in Hobart out there. So that's what made her comfortable. And she had her piano and everything there. Cynthia was very impulsive. She would do things on the spur of the moment and just, not really think about it until much later. I was also an impulsive person, but I used to at least kind of try and plan a little bit beforehand. We were there for a couple of months, and then Cynthia decided that she met this guy, Max, who was an Italian, and he was from a place called Fonteblanda in Italy, in the Tuscan region. And she decided, all of a sudden, she said, let's go to Italy and pick grapes with Max's family. Well, we were off to Italy, and we didn't actually pick grapes. As it turned out, when Max finally arrived, he had a falling out with his family, so that wasn't going to happen. And we never met them. So we ended up going back to her brothers in London, Paul and Ahsoka, and she said, all right, what do you want to do now? You want to come back to Australia? And I said, I guess it's as good a place as any. So we came back here. We started in Darwin. We had toured Australia, and I said Darwin was my favorite place, so that was where we had to stay. And we, also in an impulsive mood, she set up a food stall at the Mindle Beach Market. And she was still working at the time. So we had somebody come and do all the food prep. We hired university students to come and man the stall. And I had to set up the thing 2 times a week. And I would get over there, and this equipment that we had bought was so old. And so I was putting it together. The tent, all the burners and everything. Took me an hour and a half, and at the end of that time I went back home and took a nap. And then would show up at the Mindle Beach Market and tore the whole thing down again. So I guess that was the longest one of Cynthia's impulsive moves lasted, because we ended up doing it through 2 wet seasons and a dry season, which is about a year and a half, and ended up moving to Queensland. And we stayed there quite a while, and ended up back in Sri Lanka after the tsunami, working for a German company, helping with the recovery. And after a couple of years, Cynthia decided she wanted to go back to Australia again. So she talked the German company into giving her remote consultancy and came back here and set up house in Tasmania and would only have to go back to Sri Lanka every 3 months. So it was a pretty sweet deal for some time. And that's how I got to know Tasmania and came to be my home as well as Cynthia. Although she would say, back in the day, they never did this. So, I guess that in all this time, we really enjoy being here. And Cynthia reacquainting with many of her friends over the years, the many years back in the day, and meeting new friends of mine and hers, and it's so good to see all of you here today. And she would have loved this. And I mean, all of you people were very special to her. And I'm so glad you can make it.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Kev. Pretty hard task. Now, Tim. He's already celebrated the life of his mother with her Victorian friends and family at his farm just north of Melbourne. But I know he'd like to reflect on his mum and grandmother, providing further insights into Cynthia. But no family secrets, please. Okay. Kim.
My mother was special. As all of you know, it was quite something to be under her gaze, to see her smile, to be entertained by her, to hear her stories. Some of you will know what it was like to see her rage, and she could rage, and she could rail. None of you know what it was like to be a boogan. What is a boogan? I'm a boogan. It was a name she called me. It was a name she called me when I was 16. It was a name she called me when I was around all my 16-year-old friends. It came from a song that went, Gilly Gilly, Oss and Feather Cats, Melon Boogan by the sea. When I was a baby, I loved it. I used to kick my legs in the air and it stuck. So I've been a boogan ever since. My mother came out here when she was 16, not 17. And she spent a couple of years with family, going to high school. And we had family in the last memorial in Victoria, and we tried to get to the bottom of this, but couldn't really get to it. So the years after that were somewhat mysterious, but let's just say they probably weren't innocent. Somehow she ended up with the likes of Felix. Felix was an artistic drifter, carrying a lot of damage, and was completely incapable of stability. So some short time after that, I was around and Felix wasn't. Oh, sorry, microphone. So there she was, at that time 19, single, female, from another country, at a time when Australia probably wasn't as aligned as it is today. She was pressured quite seriously to adopt me out, but she wouldn't have a bar of it. Instead, she faced a harsh world by herself with me. And we had a gilly Ossenpfeffer of the time. Shortly after that, sometime soon, she met Tim Meredith and moved to Tasmania and met all of you. And we continued to have a great time. Some would say, my peers would have said I was a mummy's boy. You probably would have said she was a helicopter parent. But we did have a good time. But we also would fight. As I said at the beginning of this, she had a cranky side. And me, at the young age that I was, learnt pretty early on how to push those buttons. And yes, we would have atomic ones. But the special thing about it was that half an hour later, after they occurred, we'd be laughing, we'd be smiling, we'd be happy with each other. She'd be making me massage her feet. It was special. It was fiery, but it was the way she is. Again, a bit later after that, I became a teenager and I needed to leave the roost. But my mother, being the way she was, she wouldn't have a bar of that either. Times I wasn't grateful, but at other times I was. There was a time, because I went through periods of darkness in my life. And when I would fall, she'd be there to pick me up, even when I didn't know I was falling. One time, I was living in an old, one kind of hellhole of a flat in, I think, near town, smoking way too many cones and going absolutely nowhere in my life. She rocked up one day, put me in the car, took me to a hairdresser, and my beautiful long greasy hair cut off. A month after that, I was in Sri Lanka getting to learn and understand my roots. A year after that, I was at university. She had a way of bringing me back and levelling me. At the end of university, I was at another crossroads, going into a pit, and knowing the way she was, I decided to tell her. And sure enough, she went from calling me once a day to probably 6 or 7. Experiencing that kind of love and devotion, you cannot remain in your pit. She moved me to Tasmania, gave me a job, and for the most part since then my life has been pretty lemon. She and I got close again, and it was a wonderful time. But, as always, we would have our massive fights, and many of you would have witnessed the fire that would come from the pair of us. Might have to do a little. What's the next point? Oh yeah. So how could I match that? The next point was she met Cliff. And that was about time too, because I didn't need a helicopter parent anymore. I needed to do my own helicopter parenting of these beautiful children, Kretser and there's one back there. And so my mother thankfully opened her big heart to encompass Bergen, Clifford, Kretser and Willem. And she always had space for all of that, and all of you. 2 years ago, she started dialysis. 2 years ago, she would lose steam in our fights. Last Christmas just been, we didn't fight at all. And I knew then that our journey was coming to an end. The love of a parent for their child is huge, always. But I wonder if it's even more powerful when that mother is alone, young, by themselves in a country without their family. Maybe. It was overwhelming for me at times. But it shaped who I am, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of her. I'll always, and this will be the first time I'll ever say it, but maybe it's what I'll keep. I am Boogie.
Thanks, Tim. Moving on. Having known Cynthia for well over 51 years, Lee Taylor will now share a couple of her special memories of this rather vibrant and creative person. Lee, all yours.
What a wonderful speech. What a wonderful speech. And I'm not as confident as these things as Tim is. But when I was thinking about Cynthia and 51 years that we have known each other, I thought, my God, the stories that I could tell. And then I thought of all you people here. Every one of you who knew Cynthia had a story to tell, whether it's a happy story, whether it's a story that was maybe embellishing the truth. Not that she ever did that too. But I recalled when we first became acquainted with Cynthia 51 years ago, as Greg said. And it was not me, but my husband William, who we had just come back from England. Cynthia had just come down from Victoria, and the two of them were unemployed. And they both got a job with the Commonwealth Employment Service. Some of the oldies here will remember the Commonwealth Employment Service. And William came home from his first day at Commonwealth Employment Service to say, I've met this really interesting lady named Cynthia. And then he began to tell me this story about how he'd met this lady who was sitting opposite him in the Commonwealth Employment Service. And between him and her, there was a very large cream bun that she was eating at the time. And they struck a friendship up from that point. But the very interesting thing that he told William was that, in fact, she got the job when she was perhaps embellishing the truth about the speed of her typing. But nonetheless, she managed to keep that job for quite some period of time. So my first memories of Cynthia were related to food. And I think most of you who have had a relationship with Cynthia would realise that she was defined in many ways by her love of food. Cynthia liked to eat food. She liked to prepare food. But more importantly, she liked to talk about food. And so I thought, of all the stories I could tell, and there are so many over 51 years, what stories about food could I tell about Cynthia? Just recently, one of my grandsons, who's sitting over there, was given a school assignment and to go and talk to somebody who was a recent immigrant. And he rang Cynthia, and though she was quite unwell, she very kindly said, yes, she'd be happy to be interviewed. So Joshie interviewed her. And in the course of that interview, she told a couple of very funny stories, which I'll recount in a minute. But one of the things, Joshie asked her what she missed most about coming to Australia. And no surprises there, she said food. It was the Sri Lankan food that she missed. But she also retold the story about when she first arrived in Australia, about, he asked her what she thought of Australia and was it difficult, and she said, well, yes, it was difficult. Some of the slang I didn't know, the words that people used and so on and so forth. But there was one occasion, she said, when very early on, she was asked to go for a dinner, and they told her to bring a plate. And of course, she literally she thought it was strange at the time, but then she went to the party and took a plate with nothing on it. We lived round the corner from Cynthia, so Cynthia often would appear at our kitchen door for a chat. Not only a chat, but bags full of leftover curry that she had cooked the night before. She was never keen on leftovers, was she, Tim? She would put leftovers in the fridge, but she preferred other people to eat them. So she would bring curries around, and we had 3 small children at the time, and our children learned very early to eat quite hot Cynthia curries. I noticed that on our table here, people would know those little round cakey things called petit fours. When Cynthia was working at Skillshare, some of you may well be here now, she decided that she wanted to teach some of these women some skills that would be useful to them, and she taught a group of women how to bake petit fours, those little cakes. Not only did she do that, but she managed to get the contract to supply petit fours to Parliament House, which was an amazing achievement. And then finally was this story that I can recall very, very vividly. One day I was sitting in our kitchen and she'd knock at the door and Cynthia's there, and I thought, oh, more curry coming. And she rushed in and says, look, this weekend coming, I've got a residential range cooking, Sri Lankan cooking course that I'm conducting for a bunch of professional people, anaesthetists, specialists and so on and so forth. What will I cook? Well, asking me what to cook, and it was going to be a Sri Lankan. Anyway, I began giving her a few suggestions. I suggested lampreis. She said, no, far too complicated. Anyway, I suggested a few things and she said, don't worry, I'll think of something, and off she went. Anyway, next week she appeared once again at the kitchen door and she came in, so I said, brilliant. She said, brilliant, it worked famously. Sri Lankan cooking, they just lapped it up. So I said, so what did you cook? Oh, she said, I just made it up. I just used what I had and I just made it up. But she said, more than that, I made up a really fancy Sinhalese name for the name of the meal or the curry. And then she said, I made up a restaurant in a small town south of Colombo. And she said, they lapped it up. They absolutely lapped it up. But she said the real kicker was when I was telling her that this is where it came from, this restaurant, it's south of Colombo, and one of the guys piped up and he said, oh yes, I've been there. So she absolute bloody wankers, she said. Anyway, one could go on, and everyone here has probably got their own stories, but that whole thing, I mean, our relationship was so much around food, and I mean, she was so wonderful to our children and our grandchildren. So, over to you, Greg.
Well, no, I won't go on about stories about food, but I certainly could. But she was a great cook. Now, two people who couldn't be here today, Penny Mason and David Marsden, they're probably Cynthia's oldest friends, even though they are domiciled in the north of the state. Penny is an artist. She had an exhibition today, I think. It was an opening for that. Is not well. So what did she do? She knew her daughter Gillian was coming down here, so she quickly, I don't know how you do it, but set what she had to say onto Gillian's phone. And so that was great. We thought, gee, we have no message from Penny or from David, but we do have Gillian. Would you please welcome her all the way from
So Penny writes, I'm so sad not to be here. it is very odd not having my dad's laughter in the background. It's a bit unnerving. He would love this as well. I believe David and I are here today as the two who have known Cynthia the longest. Although I'm pretty sure that there are quite a few of you here who have had a lot more contact with her over her life, because we were only ever in the same city for 3 or 4 years. Firstly, in 1973 in Melbourne, where we first met her and her tiny son Tim, who's apparently the tomato patch raider. And that was until she and her then partner Tim Meredith moved back to Tasmania. I'm hazy about the year, but it was shortly before the Hobart Bridge came down in 1975. We visited them several times when they lived in Belrive, and later when we relocated to Hobart ourselves in 1977, and we saw a lot of each other in Faraday Street, West Hobart. Our time in Hobart was to be short-lived. We moved to Macedon, Victoria, where Gillian, me, was born, and later to Flinders Island, where she and her family came to stay with us, bringing along David's daughter Alyssa and Tim's daughter Monique, as well as, of course, little Tim was there as well. This was to be the first of many holidays spent together, which, as it turned out, were usually marked by some big drama or other. The time that David got all the fingers on one hand jammed in the car boot, and the other time he nearly died in Police Point from an asthma attack. I won't go on, but these stories were revisited many, many times. Most of our other interactions took place around the dinner table. I'm pretty sure Cynthia would have been perfectly happy if I'd served her nothing but oxtail stew with potato mash and pickled walnuts for the rest of our dinners together. She would regale us with the story of that being our bonding moment, the second time she met. Not that she would ever use the phrase bonding moment. I know that most of you here would be familiar with Cynthia's culinary triumphs and generosity. I was never daunted by a curry of any strength after Cynthia's, which were a wonder of variety and complexity. But the main event was always conversation. Cynthia had taken a Bachelor of Arts and later a Diploma of Education soon after arriving in Tassie, and from that point on she became unstoppable. A wonderful entertainer full of jokes and challenges, Cynthia was a difficult woman and a mass of contradictions, qualities David and I admired in her tremendously. She had a point and she knew how to make it, along with an utterly charming love of small children and formidable capacity for organising. She was a perfect fit for her role at Gagebrook, and we're sorry that we're a bit vague about her title there, but maybe Lee or Will could fill us in with that gap. After leaving this position, our contact with Cynthia became patchier. She found a new partner, the lovely Cliff, in Sri Lanka, and took on several more challenging international jobs. We were both so glad that Cliff came into her life. We loved to catch up with them when they moved back to Hobart. Always wonderful hosts. We met up with many of you who are here, reminisced, listened to her on the piano, ranted about politics, ate too much, drank too much, some of us. And much as she railed against her failing health and the health system, of course, her sense of good humour rarely left her. We miss her.
That was a hard task as well. You're all brilliant. You've done some lovely stuff, Cynthia would be proud as punch if she was here. With a gag, I guess. Okay. Now, one of Cynthia's special mates, and one of mine actually, is Bill Taylor. And he's a bit keen, very keen, to reflect on a particular aspect of Cynthia's colourful life, with a little help from his son, Marty. Bill, it's all yours.
Good we had that chat. No, yeah. We thought
it's interesting. I had a few things to say. The first of which was that I would basically say nothing. But the comments that have been made before have just sparked so many interesting memories. I will digress a bit. Thanks, Marty. Sounds really good. You're a great trainer there. And Cynthia would take full credit for any talent Martin has got. It's basically, I wanted to say a couple of words about music. It was fascinating to hear Cynthia play on the recording just as we were coming in, because back in the day, 50 years ago, 51 years ago, or shortly after that, one of the jobs Cynthia got was playing in Memories, a restaurant that was on top of the hotel near the railway roundabout, Memories, and just down near the stadium actually. And she would play, she had a great repertoire at that stage of popular music, and she was a great hit at the restaurant. Greg went there, I think, on a couple of occasions, certainly we did. And it was a nice little earner, but she had this amazing talent that people who are able to play by ear, the sound gets into their head and they can play it. She recounted how this talent developed. It was when she was with getting taught music in the school, and the nuns would come around and belt her across the hands every time she got a note wrong. As a consequence, she could never play directly from music. And a couple of years ago, I think, Cliff, she started trying to relearn that skill, and a particular piece of music I know that she sought was the one that Martin was always requested, demanded, whenever Cynthia and Martin and a piano were in the same space. Martin would be directed to play this particular music. So I think in terms of, bringing it all back home, play it again, Sam.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, so there were two tracks really that came to mind when we were thinking about songs that were special for us. I mean, she had a lot to do with my interest in piano, and as Dad said, would always push me to play whenever I could. The first song is from a movie. I recall her drawing it to her attention from the movie Baghdad Cafe, I think. It's kind of a moment, which is nice, but there's a lot of transition in it, and it's a nice piece. The second piece is the one that she always wanted me to play, which reminds me most of her, which is called Blue Room, which is kind of an old standard, but I've always tried to emulate the way Cynthia would play. It has a very loping, relaxed approach that she brought to her playing, which is, I think, really, really distinctive, and you probably all remember that. I can't do it the way she did, but that was the one she always asked me to play, so they're the songs.
party. Okay, that's a wrap. Okay, enjoy what's left of the afternoon tea, and perhaps when you do that, you can just share some special moments and memories with each other, or you might just like to walk through the gardens reflecting on your memories of Cynthia. So thank you, Cliff, and thank you, Tim.